take it to an all-new level is what our next set of panelists will be discussing. Let me now introduce our moderator. We have with us Mr. Sandeep Batra, partner, Sapphire Human Solutions. Let me also welcome our panel on board, Mr. Amit Das, Chief Human Resource Officer, Times of India Group. We have with us Mr. Anil Salvi, Managing Director and Group Head, Human Resources, JM Financial. Let me also welcome Mr. Pankaj Suri, Executive Vice President, Human Resources, India, Edelman. A warm welcome to Mr. Praveen Menon, Chief People Officer, IndiaFirst Life Insurance, and Mr. Sunil Seth, Human Resources Director, Dentsu. A warm welcome to each one of you. Looking forward for our audience to send in questions for our panel. Over to you, Mr. Batra.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, my fellow panelists and the participants, to take out time and come to this first edition of Rethink HR. Really pleasure. Thank you so much to have you on this very, most pertinent panel discussion of working from home to remote work, reimaging where and how people work. I'm sure, when pandemic happened, we all had work from home. We all used to do that. But obviously, with the pandemic hitting us last year, work from home became a norm, maintaining social distancing to virtual work, self-isolation, shutdowns, quarantine, etc. was the way forward for all of us. And today, as we are 9 months into the pandemic, I was reading this survey which happened around the work from home environment, where they were surveying about 50 CEOs, and 80% of the CEOs actually mentioned that they would now want their employees, colleagues to now come back to work in 2021. And when the survey also interviewed employees, and employees said 10% of the employees actually just wanted to come back into the office environment. So, we've been grappling with this predicament of what forward. And this brings me to this question, of how we're tackling the challenge of this transition from work from home to remote hybrid and then back to office again, as we see unlocking happening, as we see lockdowns moving away. And I would like to start with none other than Mr. Amit Das, the CHRO for Times of India Group, to share his views about this question, and then we can take it forward among the panelists.
Sure.
Over to you, Amit.
Yeah, I hope I'm audible. So good afternoon,
Absolutely.
all of you, and thanks, Sandeep, for setting the context. So while I heard what you said about the survey report that you must have read recently, the one that I referred to, it says very different things. While people have been itching to come back to work after 10 months of lockdown situation, but when it actually comes to rubber hitting the road, I find people are talking different things or thinking different way. In fact, we had a dipstick internally within our organization when we found that people are actually enjoying their current status of newfound freedom of this remote working. Okay, and they are not in a mood to come back to office, and especially in a city like Mumbai or Delhi, where large amount of personal time is consumed in the commuting from office to work and back. Yeah, so I think that's a big challenge that we have today. But having said that, I think when the economy is recovering from the crisis, one thing is certain, that things won't return to the normal in the way we define normal during the pre-COVID stage in our world of business. So whether we call it a new abnormal or new normal, a different mode of organizational leadership will be required to manage this environment of urgency, high stakes, uncertainty more than what we had experienced in the past. So we need to foster this adaptation, helping people to develop these next practices for this new world of business, while they continue with the best fit practices necessary for our success. So since some of us are from HR here, when we consider the Kubler-Ross change curve in this kind of a scenario, I believe we are still in that accepting phase. So as organizations and the society at large, we have accepted that change is inevitable. And hence, this is the time that we need to start working with those changes rather than against them. So this is the most difficult time in my mind, and at the same time, most exciting phase in any change management scenario. In the current scenario, organizations need to have that shared vision that helps them to navigate through this paradigm shift and also master the agility to make the necessary adjustments while on the go. So while all of us are aware that it's impossible for anyone to predict the exact contours of consumer behaviors and preferences or the resultant business landscape post this COVID phase, but I think we have to take this as an opportunity to creatively disrupt and innovate our future ways of doing things. I personally don't think we will recoil back to pre-COVID scenario, but most, probably would be leapfrogging into a much brighter future. We must support the organization to kind of create a leadership playbook with future, success behaviors, which we can develop and succeed in the post-COVID scenario or when you come back to business. So the starting assumptions for making organizations more resilient and make them fit for this transition is to first assume that none of the crises that we have experienced in the past will be there when we transition in a new world of work. And I think linear prediction of future is too simplistic in my mind. We need to proactively engage the organization leadership into multiple scenario building approach. We have to understand the challenges and implications of each of these scenarios and co-create the new workflows. We have to re-engineer the roles. We have to look at the new productivity metrics with technology infusion, and of course, the collaboration between man and machine. So in my mind, a few emerging trends that we will be noticing at the workplace will be the Gen Z who have started entering the workplace and disrupting the status quo, the flexible and remote work schedules leading to work-life integration more than work-life balance. More investments will happen in employee well-being and inclusivity, okay? And flexible workforce will be there on multiple assignments in a gig economy and enhanced collaboration between man and machine. So at the same time, while we'll be transitioning into a hybrid work arrangement with remote working and work from home as a new ways of managing the workplace or even the workforce, I think we also need to be careful and also be conscious about few fundamental aspects. Our human brain triggered that release of those happy hormones, the way we call it, the oxytocin and dopamines of the world. I think that gets triggered based on the stimulus of different senses like touch, feel, smell, seeing, hearing. Okay. In a remote working or virtual environment, we may be able to simulate that physical environment, but we cannot replicate the physical workplace environment. And this might have an impact on our sense of belongingness and our associated engagement challenges that we'll find at the workplace.
No, that was fabulous. Happy hormones. Yes, that's what we are all talking about. So with that, I would request Anil to share his views, please, on how he thinks he can generate happy hormones as a CEO. That's interesting.
Am I audible, Sandeep? Am I all right?
Yeah. Absolutely, you are.
Yeah, and thank you. I think that there is an advantage which the opening batsman has, and there is a disadvantage which the subsequent speakers have, right? So I'm just wondering, there's anything left to talk about, because everything is spoken and dealt with, right? And in such a fabulous manner, as you rightly said. I think he's talked about all the aspects of working from home. So coming back to work from home, if you probably I don't know if there is any research that has gone into last 1 year, 2020, which is the word which has been most often used. I'm sure work from home would be among the top 10 most often used words that we would come across. And rightly so. I think this has been debated, discussed, and this is probably third kind of conference that I'm attending, which we are discussing this particular aspect, and a few articles I have written or the interviews that have happened where we have touched based on this particular aspect. Now, and over a period of time, and we hopefully get at the fact end of the pandemic, and when I look back, this work from home, it appears to me like an elephant, right? And many of us are those blindfolded organizations or people trying to touch each part of it and trying to figure out what it means to us. What I'm trying to say is, the work from home would mean different things to different people, right? See, for
Correct.
example, I work for JM Financial, and we have different type of businesses. Besides me heading a particular business, so we have an institutional business, a sizable one at that, and we have retail part of businesses. Now, the institutional businesses are totally comfortable and on a work from home kind of environment, right? The retail businesses, the business which I hope, head or lead is also a kind of a retail business, and we had to hit the ground running much earlier on. I think, after 2-3 years, we had to figure out ways and means by which, we could, basically establish different kind of connects. Clearly not as it used to be pre-COVID period, but certainly I think you can't call it. Certainly they didn't, get into work from home entire period. So, for example, I look after, housing sales, and there is again, we have a housing loan company. So I think these are the businesses which are extremely retail in nature, and you need to have that connect, right? People still don't buy houses on Amazon, right? Yeah, so till that time, it happens. I guess we will be at, we will be still traditional. We'll still do those visits, still deliberate, still negotiate. We would want to go and have the touch and feel. So there are businesses which can had ability to work remotely, and there are businesses which didn't have that inherent ability to make it work on a remote basis. And I
Correct.
also have theory to that, right? I think see, and theory, and again a challenge. So I think we now just before we opened up, I think there were two different diverse views in terms of, you referred to people wanting to come back, and there was another view that that's not what we hear. Now it depends on which set of people you talk to, right? And to my point, correct, right? I think it's going to be meaning very different things to a large set of organizations, businesses, etc. Again, I'm just wanting to talk about the social or the cultural aspect of work from home, right? Work from home has been pretty institutional in Western world, and it was an acceptable kind of practice, and especially in the technology firm, because they had an ability to track the work, right? In most of the Indian organizations, you inherently don't have an ability कि बस वो घर पे है काम कर रहा है कि नहीं, आपको there is no avenue to
True.
know, right? वो सोया है कि बंदा काम कर रहा है, right? How do you know?
True.
But if you're a coder, I think I used to be heading HR of an IT company, so we could log in terms of उसका definite target होता था, this is the kind of deliverables that you have to have and stuff like that. So it used to work. So the whole the mechanism and environment was geared to deal with that particular aspect. Now there are businesses where this environment did not exist, right? So how do you basically deal with this particular challenge? अभी तक तो ठीक है, there was a lot of this, I think human angle and accommodate people and stuff like that, right? You try to save jobs of people, and as long as your organization was in business and could make money, I think you sustained the workforce. The organizations which couldn't make money have done downsize, have done pruned the salaries and what have you, right? So I think let us not kid away or shy away from that aspect. End of the day, you are in business, and if the business has been functional, you have been functional, and people have been paid salaries. If it has got compromised, the compromise has been passed or shared with the employees as well, they being a large stakeholder in the whole game. So the social aspect that I was referring to, I think people coming back to work, I think, see, अपना घर उस तरह से बना नहीं है कि you would actually work from home, right? Leave aside certain startup society. If you go to maybe 70-60% of the workforce, everybody is at home, they would not have a place to sit, right?
Yeah.
So
especially in Bombay.
Especially in place like Bombay, or for that matter, Calcutta. If you go to Heartland Delhi, any of the metros you go and see. So there was when Bombay shut down, there was exodus of people going out. The fundamental reason was there was no mechanism for them to the workers to come stay together. Like 10 people sleep in one house. How do you sustain yourself on a continuous basis? So I think there is this other aspect of the social, the physical accommodation in a place. Second thing, I think, and I always said this, in India, work is not work, right? Unless and until you actually pick up a gadi or a suitcase or wear a nice tie or a shirt and go to work. I think, there is this pride that comes along. And then job is not a job in India, right? I remember when I used to be working in a foreign bank, there used to be, this one particular foreign bank had extended VRS. And there are people who had taken VRS, but there are a few people who actually still had not told their home that they had taken VRS. And they used to still leave in the morning and go and sit in the garden and come back in the evening. The basically stigma of not being at home, right, is a strong kind of a thing. So while you and me might not feel, and we would be still in business, whether at home or not, but there are certain strata of the society where there is this significant pride that gets associated with leaving at 9 o'clock and coming back, and probably the value at home also to you is when you actually go to work and come back, right? But there are different kind of challenge and aspects I don't want to include on, so we can go and keep on talking. But there's a limited point to.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, Anil, that you bring up the social culture aspect. Like my children told me initially, you're sitting at home, you got to go to work. So this work from home environment, yes, that's a very well point. And this brings me to you, Praveen, being in the insurance space, how have you, IndiaFirst, and you have coped up of this change, as you see?
Yeah, I mean, as Anil mentioned, most of the points are covered by Amit and Anil. So let me just give a few bits to, my take on it. Typically when this entire thing started, if you look at insurance sector per se, you would see that more than 80% of the people actually belong to the sales force. Now the question was that, okay, I mean, you could introduce something called a work from home for a period of about 2 months, and thereafter slowly, whether we like it or not, the organizations were inching, saying that the productivity has gone, completely, for a toss. How do we bring it back? And there was a need for, let's assume, the sales force to go out there and get some kind of a top line for us, right? So the question was that if we were pushing sales guys, of course, we would give them, kind of a flexibility and a voluntary city to it. But if we were to tell them to get some business, then it was not possible for us to roll out something called a work from home for, let's assume, non-sales employees in the company. Because the positioning of that, I mean, if I have 3,000 employees in the company, 2,500 belongs to sales, and just for those 500 people, it becomes very difficult for me to say that work from home is only applicable to those 500, not 2,500. 2,500, you'll have to take all COVID precautions, but end of the day, let's assume that we need business, going. So then the concept came through of saying that work from anywhere. So the term called work from home actually recoined it, and it became work from anywhere, because then the positioning happened like this, stating that we are not telling sales to come to office, etc. Right? You need to do what it takes for you to do your role. Similarly, for non-sales also, we, kind of coined this, and we said that you can work from anywhere, but there is a certain element of the output that would be required in your, in your role, and we would expect, you to kind of fulfill that, requirement. So that work from home immediately, suddenly, overnight, got changed to work from anywhere. So that was the first aspect, right? The second aspect is that, of course, the fact that morally the company is responsible for people's health, their wellness, their well-being, etc. And it was very, very difficult for us to keep pushing people, saying that we are only looking at the top line, and we need to, for the sustainability of the organization, top line is a must, etc. Right? So then we deliberated quite a lot, saying that, of course, the customers are not going to come to offices, if they are not going to come to offices, how is it that offices, in the sense their own respective, let's assume, bank partners, how is it that we will be able to contact the customer? And there was a need for us to model the entire business, partner with, let's assume, the sales force. And that is something which the owners HR actually took it on to them. And what we said is that instead of we really mandating our frontline sales force to go to bank branches, meet the customers, because physical meeting was not possible, let us do something like webinar, what you and me are doing today. We actually introduced this somewhere in the month of June itself, last year. And we said that we will create curated programs. We will invite customers over a webinar. We will explain to them about financial inclusion. and we'll also talk to them about, let's assume, insurance in case if you need to buy it. So this was a new concept because the sales force was not equipped, because never ever before COVID they had anticipated that they'll be called upon to arrange a webinar, speak to the customer, take them through various sessions, financial products, etc., and get them onboarded. But of course, we said that of course it is not possible for us to overnight train them. We actually conducted the webinars on behalf of sales. Over a period of time, they picked it up, and then even as we speak, there are a lot of sessions, webinars happening now, on the ground for us to kind of get to those customers, and then eventually for the sales to happen. Now, imagine a situation where here is a sales guy prior to 20th of March 2020 stating that I'm a high flyer, I'm, let's assume, one of the best in sales, and you give me a customer, I'll be able to meet the customer and enact a sale, and suddenly on 21st of March there's no customer available, and the requirement of the business dynamic is such that you need to arrange for a webinar like this and try and convince a customer through a webinar of buying a product. So, we keep talking in HR, Sandeep, that skill set is something which we need to constantly look at. It's an ever-changing dynamics. It's an ever-changing business world. Be in HR or be in any other functions, we'll need to look at what it takes for us to be relevant in the future. And that is something like a capability development, upskillment, etc. We keep preaching that. And here was the first instance when everything hit them, everybody so hard that, and overnight, I mean, nobody anticipated, nobody planned for it. And, and we said that, okay, this is what the need of the hour is. Otherwise, you become irrelevant. And that's where the first thought of saying that, okay, let's assume whatever that post-COVID world is going to be, how as a organization, how as a business, how as a professional, that we need to stay relevant. And that, as I speak, it still continues. We do not know, as Amit mentioned, or Anil also touched base on that we do not know what is the new COVID, post-COVID world going to be. According to me, it is going to be a hybrid model. It could be, definitely human beings are social animals. One of the challenges that I'm facing today is that people are working in silo. So that inclusivity and diversity that we are talking about, which we need to bring onto the table for the belonging to happen, it is very difficult for me. Like, today my onboarding, that first day welcoming of a person, everything is virtual. So actually the person, even in my own team, more often than not times. So I'm speaking to them over a virtual platform. So as they say, the kinesthetic piece of patting the bag and welcoming the person, giving a proper handshake, etc., even at this point in time is not happening. So then the question is saying that, what is the difference between, let's assume, somebody who is working on a contract like a gig economy and somebody who is an employee, especially for the newcomer. The old timers still have a legacy or some kind of association stating that, okay, I was a part of this company and this company has done all of these things and I know what is the culture and ethos of the company. But for a newcomer, the culture and ethos is only hearsay. He's not experiencing that at all. And for me to bring those guys back into this system and make them really inclusive is a challenge as we speak. And the other piece is the fact that things like logistics, etc. Now, I have a concern here as well. Okay, let's assume a case wherein even post-COVID times, the industry says that, okay, we will follow fully work from home model only. What happens is that if that is a model that if majority of the industries and the companies follow, then there wouldn't be any requirement of people to go out and shop. There wouldn't be any requirement of people to buy new vehicles, new garments. There will be travel will be very, very limited, etc. It's a economy which is interconnected, right? And if the other industries don't do well, we cannot expect one industry to only keep doing well. Absolutely. In the short run, of course, the expense management will be nice. And we say that, okay, we will save on office space, logistics, etc. But over a period of time, if the respective industries, different industries are not doing well, it will have a cascading negative impact on every industry. And if India, we are talking about so many people, who will require an employment, something like this, if it gets implemented, it will be the new norm. But, it will be slightly difficult and the economy will go through a period of turbulence. So as we speak, to sum it up, I think, everything is opening up. But sooner than later, a lot of industries possibly will not completely operate from work from home, because they will realize that for them to also survive, other industries needs to do well. And it will be more or less an hybrid model, wherein they will allow 2 or 3 days a week for the people to come to office, strategize it, go back and implement it. And that will take care of, as Amit mentioned, that people may not be comfortable to come to office on a daily basis. And also, as Anil mentioned, that you can't just keep working from home. So there could be a mixture of being able to work from home for maybe 1 or 2 days a week, 3-2 model, maybe if it is a 5-day week and 3 days in the office. And maybe that will be there to stay. And if you were to ask me, that would be my preference, as at least for my organization.
Got it. Thank you, Praveen. Thank you so much. The hybrid model. And quickly, Pankaj, what has been your experience and what is the way forward?
So of course, I think my fellow panelists have already mentioned most of the points, and I think given the challenges that people have, while it has been blessings for some of them, working from home, but as we discussed, a large family, small homes, people with special needs, elderly parents, all that is also making people difficult to work from home. So I think, given that sort of a situation, and since the type of work is such that maybe not all work requirements can be fulfilled while working from home, so people may have to come in office. So I think the way forward is the hybrid model, and my initial thoughts on that would be that one is that every situation is unique, so you can't have one size fits all, and any future policy that you're looking at needs to have enough flexibility to allow colleagues to largely be in charge of how they work. I mean, one has to just embrace that philosophy that don't care where the job gets done from, as long as it gets done. I think that's what one has to look at. The second piece is about, that progression of an employee must not be dependent on the working styles and the personality type. And I think we discussed this yesterday briefly when we were there. One of the concerns that could be with hybrid working is that it might suit specific personality types, and that if you are more present in the office, you might get the better opportunities and recognition vis-a-vis someone who chooses to work from home more than the office. So I think, someone used that word, that we have to destigmatize, this work from home culture. So that needs a shift in the mindset and the way we look at things. The other piece which I feel that leadership needs to direct that company's culture. That will be very, very important in a situation like this. Trust should sit at the heart of any reworking of policies and in articulations of cultural goals. I think we touched upon that. In my view, there needs to be consistency across the business in adhering to these change policies. If this doesn't happen, it will erode the trust. And that, I think, is another area to look at, that you can't have one set of policy for someone and not giving that advantage to the other. So I think these are some considerations from my side, Sandeep.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you. And Sunil, last but not the least, now that you've heard everybody, some quick inputs from you.
Thanks, Sandeep. Like Anil earlier said, the disadvantage when you have 4 strong opening batsmen.
Sir, you are our Pujara.
I will rather take that and do the final touches. I think everybody has covered all the aspects which are needed. I think one aspect which I feel which forced all of us was that we never witnessed something like this. And when we kind of launched ourselves into the so-called work from home scenario, I think everybody wanted safety first.
Yeah.
And that will continue to be a prime factor even when we talk about coming back to office. I think that will be more defining in every aspect, because whether it is psychological, whether it is social, whether how we define our policies, I think it will play a key role in terms of how we are able to create an environment and give that confidence, whether it is for the organization or for our employees. I think that will become the most critical piece. Even if you look at the way government has kind of progress itself has only kept that as the top priority in terms of reopening its providing guidance on reopening. I think that will become a very critical aspect as we, and I can't disagree on any of the points which my fellow panelists have said. I think those factors are all critical.
Perfect. Thank you. So this brings us to our next question of, how do we see organizations like yours tackling the challenge of performance management? Because as somebody also alluded to just a few seconds back, that, being work from home, being in that environment, performance management, productivity, etc., in a work from home environment or a hybrid environment, how do we tackle that challenge? And to, I would now like to bring in Anil, to share his views, and then we'll go around the panel.
Yeah, I think, in fact, I was looking forward to the answer for this particular questions from other panelists.
You should have texted me.
Jahan pe I need help, you put me on the front foot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
how have you been doing?
Anil, you have been given an opportunity because you expressed it last time. So
yeah.
If you need help, I can step in.
Yeah, I know. As they say that, be careful what you ask for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's true.
So should I or what? Or Anil, you can continue, or I can.
Sure. I think, see, the performance appraisal for this year is certainly going to be dealt with very different. At least, I can share with you my side of. Again, I said, different businesses, and same thing would apply to, us as well. Fortunately, the appraisal may not be as big a challenge that as we probably would have thought earlier on. And we can go across, and I think, we expected when the COVID started, there was a kind of a doomsday prediction, right? By end of the world is undergoing to go on change, everybody is going to lose job, businesses going to shut, and all that. Now look at it, right? I was just looking at the the stock market earlier on, and it's gone berserk, right? I think sometimes one wonders, kya ho raha hai, and then touch wood, the kind of businesses that and the performance that the company has done is also exceptional, right? And again, on the lighter side, I'm not too sure, even if you would have had a non-COVID year or a normal year, I think the numbers would not have looked very different to what they are looking now, right? So, and especially I'm talking on behalf of the financial services industries, at least. So actually, we are in a happy space as far as the performance is concerned. So to that extent, I think it becomes easier to deal with the appraisal and the reward, etc. Also, what has happened is, and I think this will be true to everybody in the room here, and then since I also look after the business, because the moment it started, we thought there's going to be a lot of headwind and stuff like that. So we actually got into a overdrive in terms of managing the costs, correct? And I don't think that there is any firm which is not essentially taken a cost measure, right? There are not natural and normal savings because, we were working from home, travel nahi tha, all other stuff was stuff, office band hai, electricity nahi hai kuch, and you name it. And I think, everything is shut. So normal expenses, even without doing anything, 20%, reduction ho gaya tha. I think, some of the organizations are gone and renegotiated leases. Sandeep, aapne kara hai ki nahi?
Bilkul, we all, unlike some of us who've gone for a vacation.
Yeah.
Right? Friends.
Right. So what has happened is, the revenue has remained more or less robust. Costs have come down significantly. So I think, balance sheet all of a sudden is looking happy, right? It's happy hormones are being caused by the kind of balance sheet that, at least, the financial services organizations that are looking at it. So we have a very different kind of a problem, right? हमने जो सोचा था वो हुआ नहीं. I think, we are all right. Now there is the other concern ki, boss, whether we will be in a position to sustain this kind of a performance in the next year, right? Non-COVID में इससे बुरा होगा तो फिर कैसे होगा? So and that's the challenge that on the performance appraisal front. And now I'm actually thinking that what is going to happen in the year to come, right? Also, there is another challenge and thought which is suddenly come and thrown by the board. With whom I was talking, and they said, boss, please understand that a lot of performance is driven by the tailwinds.
Right.
So So they are asking one particular question, how are you going to measure a performance, right? Performance by virtue of environment or a performance by virtue of an individual contribution. So how are you going to measure it, right?
True.
And because as everybody said, people have been working from home, and there have been businesses where you could actually validate the work from home, right? When there are numbers, right? If a person is supposed to do an XYZ kind of sales, so अगर उसने number करा है तो उसने करा है भैया, वो घर पे बैठा हो, सोया हो, जो भी किया हो, तो सोने से तो number आएगा नहीं ना, उसने करा है. I think he is going to deliver that number. But there could be certain roles which are very qualitative, right? And then that includes even some roles of HR are significantly qualitative, right? Though I know, of course, you can quantify to a lot of extent, but yes, I think there's certainly a lot of roles that essentially become very, very qualitative. So how do you basically measure them and all that, right? Correct. So I think we are dealing with some kind of a thing, but coming back to your original question in terms of how the performance is going to be measured, performance is going to be measured through the numbers and deliverables, and to a lot of extent, I think we had quantified the aspect. Of course, there is a what and how, right? What number is essentially is there on the table, and how piece is essentially I'm going to be erring in favor of the employees, right? If agar number ठीक है तो उन्होंने भी ठीक ही काम किया होगा. So I'm not going to steal. So I'm not going to steal that story from them. So that's a very simply put kind of a explanation in terms of how we are going to deal with. So I don't have, at least for the businesses that I have, a major challenge. I've just released my Q3 results, which is fabulous. So
congratulations to you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Happy harmony.
So we should be buying share price of all JMM invested companies. Perfect. Amit, over to you. Yeah.
At least you will not lose money.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good tip for all of us. Thank you, Anil. Yeah, Amit. Yeah, Amit. Yeah, please.
So I would say that in today's networked, knowledge-driven organization, I think that more and more employees, when they'll be remotely managing their deliverables, I think the questions that all organizations are faced with today are, how do we know that people are fully productive? How do we ensure that employees are not moonlighting?
Absolutely.
The answer lies in recalibrating our mindset on not only work, but workforce, and workplace in this new environment of the new normal of hybrid work arrangement. As we get more and more impacted by these changing technologies, deliverables, and the psychological contract between the organization and the workforce. So when it comes to technology, for example, the deployment of collaborative technology solutions like, for example, the Microsoft Teams, it has enabled us to collaborate on a real-time basis. Analytics tools like Cortana, My Analytics also provide insights to employees and managers on how employees and their teams are using their time. The workplace analytics, this helps leaders gain unprecedented enterprise-wide information about whether the current collaboration patterns are helping the organizations to meet their targets, what contacts may be missing, and the time and networking trends, which can help in addressing certain complex business challenges. So in our organization, for example, we have been constantly looking at opportunities to leverage technology to not only drive productivity, but also to take over such routine transactional work across all our functions, which is resulting in building a more optimized and agile organization. When it comes to deliverables, the metrics which are focused on inputs or volume of activities have always been, in my mind, a poor substitute for the true productivity that boosts outcome and results. No matter how soothing it might look to us at the time when we are seeing that company parking lot to see all the employees who have arrived early in the day, or all those who are leaving late. That's not the way of measuring the productivity, right?
Correct.
So, however, I think organizations and leaders are learning they must go beyond the impulse to monitor the inputs and activities as a proxy for productivity. Best performing organizations, they, irrespective of the industry they come from, they define the outcomes they expect from the functions of the business rather than specific activities or the time being spent on them. So the way we are looking at it in our companies, instead of monitoring activities, attendance, presence in front of the computer system, our thinking on productivity measurement is focused primarily on results. We don't measure time spent working in editing copies, but we measure copies being edited. We don't measure time, we don't measure clients visited, but the revenue generated. So I think this transition has allowed to reevaluate and transform our overall workforce productivity model. So in our company, we are now changing the workforce mix, for example. We are taking a target of around 20% of our job roles to make them gig roles. So there will be functional experts who will work on specific projects, deliverables, and will be engaged to these gig contracts, which will provide them that kind of a flexibility to engage with assignments outside our company. And at the same time, pursue other creative endeavors. Okay, the compensation will be dependent on the agreed project timelines and the specific deliverables. Okay, than a full-time, instead of the way we work for a full-time on-roll employee. So since this gig workforce will be required to deliver a specific output, the measurement will be easy. Also, since the gig workers are not additional workforce, but replacing our existing full-time employees in our case, we are building a positive stress in the system by asking managers to get more done with less. And this gig workforce will collaborate using the same technology tools, whether it's Microsoft Teams, XYZ, and the productivity and performance deliverables can be tracked and reviewed by managers. In addition to setting clear, kind of objectives, accountability, and autonomy for deliverables, the managers need to guide, inspire, and enable their teams and help them overcome these kind of bureaucratic challenges. Help teams to leverage the best opportunities. Equip them with the right expertise and give them the kind of tools so that they can deliver fast. So once the teams as well as the individuals understand what results they are responsible to deliver, I think leaders can focus on monitoring the outcome-based measurement, which can enable the remote workforce to deliver a higher quality of work.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you. I've just got 5 more minutes. So quickly, Pankaj, can you come in?
No, I think, my only point here would be that, and I think Anil used that phrase, the difference between of what you are doing and how you are doing. So to me, I think the important part is the how part, of the whole piece. And to me, I think one big change that we have seen in our organization, Sandeep, is that the need for people to engage on a continuous basis rather than those traditional performance review processes which used to happen once in a year. Everything used to happen once in a year. You have your objectives sitting once in a year, you're getting performance bonuses once in a year, you're getting salary raises once in a year, and all happening the same time. But I think now each of these pieces has got segregated. So not everything is dependent at one point in time. So what we have done is we have come with this new online performance management application, which allows people to set their objectives on a continuous basis. So once the task gets done, they get instant feedback, and then that also allows them to get another KPI, inserted into the system, which can be a new retainer or a new project that they are getting into. So I think that's one big difference that we are seeing. And instead of making everything to be dependent at one point of the year, we are segregating. So promotions are again throughout the year. It's not that you have to wait for that one cycle to be. I think gratification has to be, especially when people are working remotely, they are not close to each other. So you have to be very quick in gratifying people. So promotions are through the year, KPIs happening through the year. Feedback is continuous. It's not that you meet once in a year and your manager then tells you what you did through the year, and then there are surprises coming in. Of course, there is certain financial aspect that you have to maintain as a discipline, because you have your budgets and you have your other pools from which you have to reward people. But I think this is one big change that we had made since last year, Sandeep, and thanks to this online platform, which is actually allowing people to do everything, from wherever they are. So that's
some fabulous inputs. Thank you, Pankaj. Sunil, would you like to add?
Yeah, I think
performance.
Yeah, more or less same. The what and how principle will always keep dominating in either scenarios, whether you are ahead of your targets and revenue or you are falling behind. And for an industry like ours, which gets hit first when something like downturn comes in advertising, the spends get sold, and then you see the the ball's rolling. Having said that, I think for us, what we have been been able to focus maybe more than a year back was changing the mindset from just saying performance management to making it more performance development. Which essentially means about giving more critical feedback and preparing the managers to be able to give that critical feedback more in a positive manner, so that positivity is infused for a continuous improvement in people's development. So with that focus, your whole approach of performance development changes, or rather the way you want to execute your reward mechanism, because then you are giving timely inputs. And like Pankaj said, if you want to reward people, you also at the same time should be able to give consistent feedback so that they're able to correct it timely rather than doing it once at the end of the year. And there are principles of 360, etc. And if you just make it a little more flexible to be able to take feedbacks on their own more willingly through the stakeholders, or where your work is getting impacted or is making a differentiation in somebody else's work, because we work in a chain environment. So how does it impact them? And you get that feedback. It gives a well-rounded inputs to a person and to the manager to be able to evaluate that particular role and person, and a holistic review can be closed. So we've taken that particular approach for our organization.
Thank you, Sunil. Praveen, any last comments from you?
Yeah, I'll just pick up pieces from what Pankaj and Sunil actually mentioned. Performance management is now more of performance development even for us. About a few years back, at least half a decade back, there was a need for the organization to slightly revisit the performance management in terms of giving instant feedback, because the employees used to come and say that, okay, I'm not going to wait for end of the year for you to give me a feedback and say that I've not done well. Instead of that, you should have given me a feedback right at the beginning, so that I could have done course corrections during the year, and I could have upskilled myself to make sure that I'm delivering as per the expectation. Now what has happened is that apart from that instant feedback, there is also the goal, which is agile, right? Gone are those days of you setting a goal for the year. In many organizations, the goals are actually set for a quarter. Now here is a scenario where the goals itself is a quarter, which is very dynamic. Plus you need to give an instant feedback on that quarterly, let's assume KPI. And that's how the organizations are moving, because the KPIs that you set for this quarter may be very, very different as compared to that of the next quarter. And until unless you get this right in terms of how you tackle this KPI, there is a high possibility that you may not be equipped enough to tackle a different KPI in the second quarter. That's the reason why instant feedback is sought after, right? Yeah,
Praveen, this is something which is in BFSI sector, like we call it QSQT.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Quarter tak.
Exactly. In the sales, it is all always it has been there that the target itself, everything gets changed. And also, what has happened, Sandeep, during the COVID is the fact that the ecosystem that we are talking about. I mean, most of the organizations, especially in the BFSI segment, would clearly say that technology as well as, let's assume, customer experience are going to be critical going forward. Now, due to COVID, the technological advancement has actually got preponed. Some things that we said that, okay, 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line, we will implement it. The organization, was very clear on the, OPEX piece, that it has to be curtailed. But we were very clear that we will invest in CapEx. So we said that we will build technology so that this technology will be consumed at a later stage. And COVID has actually helped us to prepone that. So now the thought process in terms of KPI evaluation of a person would be more of specialization. Now, more often than not times, employees cannot come back to us and say that I don't have a technology. I have to do a lot of things manually, because companies are investing in technology, making your life slightly relatively easier. But that means you will need to understand that what do you do with the technology, and the entire evaluation, matrice, not output, of course, would be there, but it is also in the input parameters that what have you done to streamline your work. What is the kind of investment that the organization has done and which you are partnered with the organization, and also the cross-functional projects, which from different functions which is put in place also goes as a part of one of the vectors, and we say that in your role you will need to have at least, let's assume, one cross-functional projects, so that the collaboration is actually established and the work seamlessness gets actually concised end to end, rather than the person working in a siloed environment.
Very good, Praveen. I think cross-functional. Absolutely. Thank you so much to all of you. We made this discussion so insightful, informative, and overall, I'm sure all the participants, we have a lot of HR professionals on this conclave right now hearing us. So I'm sure they would have really taken a leap of intelligent inputs, right from happy hormones to making sure that we come back to office and to hybrid model, and how do we take forward KPIs and gratification on an instant basis. So with this, thank you so much all my fellow panelists for speaking so candidly and sharing your point of view, and sharing with us and the whole community how do we see forward while we come back to our office spaces. Thank you. Over to you, Isha.
Thank you so very much.
Thanks everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Sandeep Batra, for really putting it all together so very well. And of course, to our panelists, I think you couldn't have been kinder with sharing your thoughts, how you and your organizations have been working. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. Once again, thank you, Mr. Batra, for joining us.